everyone, and thanks for coming. For all the newcomers here, the format of this meetup is pretty straightforward. We start with the question of the week and watch some videos afterwards and comment around those videos. Feel free to raise your hand if you have anything to say, and I'll get to you guys in sequence. Also, while watching the video, kindly mute your mics, and you feel free to use the chat function and put anything appropriate. And if you do happen to have any videos that connect spirituality and sciences or vice versa, feel free to put that in the chat and we can load them up next time. And as people start trickling in, um, we will start. I also want to mention that I'll be recording this meetup and sharing it on YouTube, so you don't have to come on camera if you choose not to. And I'll post the finished video YouTube link in the meetup comments chat. And it should be active, assuming the YouTube's content ID system does not flag it down for copyright. um, all right. So the question of the week, I've posted it in the chat, and I will also read it out here for everyone's benefit. What is the point of having beliefs, and could humans function without them? And if no one has a particular take, I'll go first. So the reason I thought of this question is because I was in another meetup and they were talking about trauma to a certain extent. And obviously that was surrounding negative beliefs that people hold on to either from the subconscious mind, or if they have dreams or nightmares and so on and so forth, or even movies or any media that people consume. That was part of the reasoning behind it, because the way they explained it was that um, if people have a string of words that form sentences, and they say to kind of watch what you say, then those things are also basically thoughts, and this concept of thought forms. And if thought forms turn to beliefs, beliefs are basically repeated thoughts or routine thoughts. So I was thinking in terms of if there's a way to kind of get rid of this middleman, which is the repertoire or repository of thoughts, um, and try to function without them. Would that even be possible? Hence the question. And the way I look at it is that if the let's say the beliefs is a form, if you were to have analogy to a computer, it could be like the hard drive that holds on to information, and placed with this information is the processing ability of the mind, for example. So, can a computer function without a hard drive? Yeah, if the operating system is small enough, which is, let's say, the BIOS, it can boot without a hard drive. And if it has enough memory or function to work with just the ROM or RAM memory, um, you could theoretically say that, yeah, there's no requirements for beliefs. Anyone else have any thoughts about this particular question? Yeah, Sonia, go ahead.
I love this topic. Oh, I just realized I didn't turn on my mic. You guys hear me okay?
Perfectly fine.
Oh, okay. Um, all right, well, my mic's coming on anyway. So I I agree with every single step that you just went through in that definition of what a belief is, and um, everything everything you just said totally resonated with me, and what I believe a belief is, and how I treat a belief, and how I then use systems and processes to rewrite my beliefs. So, is there a way to cut out the middleman? Mm, I love the way you stated that too, because we're talking about taking the process of um, neural netting, basically, and short, not short circuiting it, but I guess short wiring it so that it is something that is. Um, Eleanor is asking, could you please specify who the middleman is? Well, um, yes, I guess actually that's a great idea. Can you specify who your
Yeah,
middleman
for sure.
is?
So my take on my definition of the middleman would be the belief system. Because if your thoughts process into reality, um, let let's say the sequence is you imagine something, it goes into the belief system. The change or difference between the thought and the belief system generates an emotion, and that emotion is quote unquote used as fuel for action. And after
Mhm.
that, you come out with the result, whether it is a first time outcome, which would be in the form of a beginner's luck, or a repeated sequence of routine things that people do, whether it's driving a car or brushing their teeth, or taking a shower. And then that forms reality. And it's almost like a closed loop system or spiral where it goes back
Mhm.
into another thought. And the reality basically functions another thought. And that's the way I understand it.
Mhm.
So the middleman is any thing that is like a topping or extra stuff that is not required, or fat, basically trying to condense it as much as we can. So basically, you can, um, as Sonia was mentioning, short circuiting or bypassing the things that
That's
cause
the word.
resistance.
So I think of beliefs more as a filter. So I'm witnessing something or experiencing something, and my belief system is creating the perception or the filter through which I am interpreting what it is I witness. So the belief system, in some ways, can be bypassed in that if the desire is so strong and it is repeated so loudly without enough resistance to scramble it, but it is done in such a high vibration that it amplifies that signal so loudly, it amplifies it so much that that's what bypasses the belief system. It's which one's louder, which one's going to be the bigger voice in the universe, which one's going to be the bigger signal. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for mentioning that. And I like it because there are two ways you can go about it. Like in electrical theory, there's a short or an open circuit, which would be like this path that is not never tread, or a pathway that, for example, gets filled with snow and it's lost in time. So yeah, that's beautiful. I do see a message in chat. I will respond to that. Um, but we can, if no one has any other comments about this particular question, we can go on to the first video. All right, let me lo- load it in. And in case anyone is curious, they can't raise their hand. Feel free to just unmute your mic and say something. And if not, we'll start here.
This spaced out the buses and maximized their profits. In that case, the spacing between buses is defined by a very different probability distribution. The Cuernavaca bus system, the Riemann zeta function related to prime numbers, chicken retinas, and atomic nuclei are all examples of complex correlated systems. The components of these systems aren't independent. They interact and repel one another, and this leads to a statistical distribution in between randomness and order. The same distribution or pattern arises even though the components of these various systems are very different. They are said to exhibit universality. A hidden pattern
Okay, so that's the end of the first video. I just want to make sure everyone was able to see it, right? And if you weren't, please let me know in chat. Um, yeah, and it does usually work better on Chrome browser. So that particular video I found fascinating. I've never watched that one before. So I also found it interesting because it was referring to the video from last week that we saw uh, with the prime numbers and Riemann, sorry, hypothesis. Um, so a couple of things that stood out for me from this particular video was it was talking about randomness, and when I was in school or am in school, um, basically they always talked about how hard it is to create a true random generator because they don't have like common mechanisms to actually verify its randomness when it comes to binary calculations using current technologies. And that got me thinking as well about how we measure time. Um, Originally, we had sundials and stuff like that, um, and I guess gravity using water to create the flow of water to measure time. But now almost everything is measured using the quartz crystal, and Sonia knows this, but we were talking about crystals in our meetup or her meetup, and in the past, and we were talking about shattering glass, either a standing wave or a resonant frequency that causes that. So, in case anyone's into world domination, all you would have to do is figure out. I think it's around 32 hertz, if I'm not mistaken, to shatter a quartz crystal, and if you could kind of pass that all around the globe, you'd basically destroy time as we speak. So that's fascinating. Um, but yeah, you would also need very high amplitude of power to generate that. So maybe that's not an ideal solution. Um, and the part with chickens, it's very fascinating too because it almost looks like a bell graph, but kind of shifted to the left. And that's interesting because then you have averages or this question of patterning that occurs where you have in fractal patterns as well. You can generate more intricate stuff using a master pattern, and then basically as you scale in or out, it kind of just follows. So there's not much hard work required. If someone was designing things to make things simple, and then kind of redundancy just naturally comes in the system. Any other comments on this particular video?
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, that was a short one. The next one I think is a little bit bigger, or longer. Words, right? All right. Give me a second. I'm just finding the next link. All right, and it's about quantum computers. So that would be fascinating how to control relate the two.
From these different rules of probability than the ones that we are used to.
For example, if you want to know the classical probability of an event, say a coin landing tails exactly 10 times out of 20, you add up the probabilities of all the different ways that event could happen. That's just common sense. But common sense doesn't govern the quantum universe. Before you measure a subatomic particle, you can think about it as a wave of probability that exists in a kind of black box, a quantum system with many different chances of being in many different places.
A key difference is, well, probability is always a number from 0 to 1. Amplitudes are complex numbers. And what this means is that they obey different rules. If I want to know the total amplitude for something to happen, I have to add up the amplitudes for all the different ways that it could have happened. But when I add up amplitudes, I see something new, which is that a particle might reach a certain place one way with a positive amplitude and another way with a negative amplitude. And if that happens, then those two amplitudes can cancel each other out. so that the total amplitude would be zero. And that would mean that that thing would never happen at all.
So that's a bit of a primer for quantum computing or the benefits of a quantum computer. Yeah, I love that video because I was doing a bit of course on Brilliant recently, and there's a module or chapter on quantum computing. It's very fascinating because it talks about storing information, and it has the abilities to store more, and at the same time, it has an ability to calculate things that are exponentially complex for normal binary computer. In quantum form, it can solve them much faster. Um, but it's interesting that this is a trade-off that occurs, that if you don't have to compute as much, you're just better off using a normal computer. So I think as they were talking about cybersecurity and brute forcing passwords, for example, would be much easier to do in a quantum computer because it will process that as just one task. Um, so yeah, and to the end, I like it how they kind of showed the quantum computer almost like a reverse tower, or a building that people make, or but it's also interesting how they always have this question or perception of using gold as the best conductor to make these tubes or whatever they use. So it kind of links back to this Anunnaki story where they talk about they used to come to Earth um, to kind of mine for gold using humans or humanoid species, but this is like a kind of like kind of a myth slash conspiracy theory. So I won't go too much into it, but that's what I got from the video. Any other takes?
I feel like I'm taking a free lecture, an advanced lecture. I mean, I need to probably see it like 5 more times to really understand, but I'm enjoying it totally. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and it's about making these connections, right? So if you have a bag of marbles or a bag of pool balls, then if you have nothing to connect it with, it gets complex, right? So the more marbles and or balls that one collects, the more connections you can see naturally, I think. So it's like any new stream or field someone encounters. It's like jargon, right? It's just another word that people use to make things more complicated. There are many ways to make a pie, but usually you need some form of a crust. That's my take on it. And yeah, you need eggs. Yeah, go ahead, Sonia. I see your hand.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so just wanted to, I just remembered the last thing, one of the last things they said was that, so what are you going to do with this quantum computer? What are you going to do? When, what's it for? Why are we doing all this? And she was honest about it. She said, we don't know. We don't know. But once we start playing with it, we'll figure it out. And I loved her answer because she wasn't trying to make it sound like it's the reason the anyway, the point is it's an expensive proposition. And so to not know what you're going to do with it is a tough way to go about getting funding to keep playing with it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where larger corporations and or people with you know intricacies or things that just excite them. That's where people are kind of focused on. but
Right. They're
but there is
passionate.
applications, and as you said, the more you play with it, the more you understand.
Hmm.
Like I know how to use a hammer in 5 or 6 different ways now. So
Hmm.
before I was only using it to smash rocks. So it's very very interesting when you say about talk about it that way. But also it's also interesting because it's like learning a language, right? You need to be in the right environment and be surrounded with people that are speaking a particular language.
Yeah.
And then you kind of pick up on the words and use that experience to kind of expand on your own experience. So yeah, and I think that's where we are, right? And that's where resilience and the ability to kind of strive forward is where we're going. um, but again, this is like a optimistic view, I feel, right? There can also be things that are dangerous, whether most, I would say in the like 40s, we came across the atom and atomic weapons and atomic energy. So there's always two sides of the same coin. It's where the majority want to look, I guess. So yeah, um, yeah, thanks. Any other takes?
Are incompatible. And the big challenge is that how we can combine them together to get the best of both worlds.
An emerging approach called hyperdimensional computing aims to do just that. It taps into the power of statistical AI while also trying to emulate symbolic computing. It does this by using vectors, ordered lists of numbers that can also represent arrows in space. Depending on where they're pointing, these vectors can represent information in a highly complex multidimensional way. They can embody nuances in traits or concepts just by small changes to their orientation. These vectors can combine to represent new concepts, then be pulled apart again to discern how they were formed. And crucially, these hyperdimensional vectors can encode information without having to add more nodes to the network.
The more
Myself, if it can be made even faster.
Regev suspected that he could speed up Shor's algorithm by transforming the periodic function from one dimension to multiple dimensions. That meant including more numbers, multiplying each with itself many times, forming the periodic function from one dimension to multiple dimensions, and more efficiently.
Shor's algorithm is about finding how long you have to walk on the line to get back to where you started. In the new algorithm, we no longer walk on a line. We walk on a plane or even three-dimensional space or more. The idea is that you can walk both, right, left, but also top down on the plane. So it could be, for instance, that if you walk 4 steps to the right and 5 steps up, you'll be back to where you started from.
And all of a sudden, this phenomenon is already there. And so it's not necessarily a predictable phenomenon.
Emergence happens when a system behaves in ways its individual units don't on their own. This phenomenon can be seen across nature, such as when lifeless atoms give rise to living cells, water molecules create waves, and starlings swarm and swoop as one. Researchers are seeing that if enough digital nodes combine in large language models, surprising new behaviors can emerge. These
Yeah, that was exciting too, and it goes with the video right above it. Go ahead, Zen.
Well, the part where it was talking about teaching the computer to, instead of read one word at a time, to see the whole block of words, it reminded me of my hypnosis teacher who had developed a accelerated learning course, and part of his technique was to put people into a hypnotic state or teach them how to go into a hypnotic state before they start reading, and then to just see blocks of words at a time. He had this 3-stage eye movement where left, center, right, and you're just taking in blocks of words all at once. And your subconscious mind has seen these arrangements of words before. And so it's recognized subconsciously, but you're just taking in all this information at an accelerated rate. And yeah, it's interesting that they're teaching that for the computers too.
Yeah, it's interesting you touched on that because it's almost like teaching a baby how to like learn words or languages. And I think that's where we are at right now, right? We're teaching this quote unquote computer being from the basics. But yeah, adding on to that, it's almost like your car mirrors, right? You have left, center, and right. And I watched a movie recently. It's I think called Happy Go Lucky, or something like that. And in that, the protagonist or the female actress is wanting to learn driving, I guess it's in the UK, and her driving teacher always tells her that Enraha, I think it's like a fake god name from Egyptian time, that kind of mentions that you have to keep an eye on this quote unquote triangle, that's the all-seeing eye. Uh, which is interesting because then we talk about optics and reflections and stuff like that, and which is kind of what the video in the start was talking about, right? Like perspective is like, do you look at it from the side, do you look at it from the top, because it changes what the machine can understand. Like for a human being, if they're to see a ball, they've seen so many balls over their lifetimes that they could identify it by just seeing a partial picture of it. Whereas for a computer, it might be a bit harder to do. Uh, from my understanding, I could be wrong. I mean, technology is going pretty fast, as Fred mentioned, with Google's Tensor chips, TPUs, which are apparently target for hyperdimensional computing for AI. And Chris mentioned Google's recent Nano Banana Pro update is instantly good. So yeah, that's kind of hinting to this progress that happens. I think we're breaking that Moore's law, right, where it takes a certain amount of sequential time to grow. I think that growth is no longer linear; it's exponential, thanks to these advances in technology.
Yeah, if you could put your information all around you, 360 degrees in all directions, you've got a lot more access from that central point. Yeah. You don't have to go through the whole sequence to figure out where that information you're looking for is. You just go straight to those coordinates.
Yeah, and maybe that kind of hints to this concept of the men who stare at goats, the George Clooney's movie where they're trying to do remote viewing for the military, or um, is this extra sense perceptions, right? ESP, I think, and you just have so many more senses. If you could explore new forms of senses, then it would grow. So yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for that link. I will save it for next time for sure. Does anyone else have any comments?
Are you having this meeting every week? This
It's every other week, depending on my schedule as well.
I see.
But most of the stuff is also posted on YouTube. So if you were, I've done, I think this is the third one that I've done.
Oh, this is the
And
third one that
yeah,
you're saying? Oh, okay.
and the person who is here is Sonia. She's kind enough to allow me to host in a group. So thank you again. And yeah, she also hosts the exact same meetup. So if I'll give you the link to the other meetup group. So if you keep an eye over there, we do other meetups that are similar to this. Um, and it's in chat right now. So feel free to join there.